They gathered published data on PFA levels in drinking water. Then they went and gathered data on 10,200 California-born children that were diagnosed with cancer at that time. They compared it against 30,000 children of that same age that thankfully had not developed cancer. So they found increased cancer rates.
So they are everywhere. It seems like it's impossible to get away from them. What do we do? This is Generation Health. We bring the latest news, cutting-edge research, and time-tested best practices helping you live a longer, healthier life. With me, Joey DiMatteo, PharmD, board-certified clinical nutritionist. How are you, my friend?
Very good. How are you, Tyler?
I'm good. I'm focused. I'm ready.
Could tell.
I'm behind mic number 3, Josiah Schweinberg, engineer extraordinaire. How you doing?
Doing well.
You're very lit up. I just realized we have had those windows open, and it's much brighter in here than it normally is.
It is.
You're radiating.
Are we blown out?
I busted it down.
Look at that. You're all over it.
I am.
This is why we pay you the big bucks.
You look glorious over there, Josiah.
That was not what I meant. Okay, so Joey, we're going to dive right in. PFAS are like everywhere these days in the news, but also literally everywhere. They're literally everywhere. What are these? What are we talking about, and why are we talking about them again today?
Yeah, so there's a study that was just published in the Journal of Environmental Epidemiology.
I read it all the time.
Yeah, me too. On prenatal exposure to PFAs in drinking water and risk of childhood cancer. So we'll go into the study a little more later on, but just as a background, what are PFAs? There are large groups. There's many different ones. And this is where you can really get in the weeds. Well, this one's not as bad as this one, and this one's been banned. And there's a lot of weeds to get into with it. But just generally speaking, synthetic chemicals manufactured, used in various industries since the 40s.
Wow. Okay.
The reason...
And we call them PFAs because the actual name, polyfluoroalkyl substances.
Yeah, polyfluoroalkyl.
That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we call them PFAs.
PFAs from now on. That's it.
That's the one time you get it. Okay, Anyway.
Resistant to heat, resistant to water, resistant to oil.
Those would be useful.
Yeah. So especially in combination.
Yeah.
Think of cooking. Think of rainwear, raincoats, etc. Water resistant things. So when you're combining temperature and water and oil, very multi-use.
Yeah, I was thinking like cars and things like that. You can find all kinds of applications.
Yes.
Okay, so they're useful.
So yeah, which is the problem. Non-stick cookware, water-resistant clothing and fabrics. Food packaging is a big one too. That I'd heard, but was a little new to me. And the concern with them is that they're very persistent in the environment. Their nickname is Forever Chemicals.
Yes.
And the reason is because of their half-life. Their half-life in the human body, so basically how long your body takes to clear it, is on the order of years, depending on which one it is and depending on your health and your kidney status. The half-life in the environment, so when there's nothing actively trying to process it, it's just in its natural state. In water, it's a couple years. In soil, they estimate it could be up to 1,000 years.
Oh my gosh.
So when they say forever chemicals, and we'll talk about, again, there's a lot of different angles here. Yes, it's important to avoid them as much as reasonably possible. Like we'll talk about in water, non-stick cookware, controversial. The FDA has some explanation about why it's okay. But the bottom line is you can't totally avoid them. A lot of what's been done is done.
They literally are everywhere.
Yes. Now, on the other hand, ingesting it is very different than it being in the soil, maybe near your house. So again, a lot of different ways to slice it. Unless
you eat the dirt near your house.
That's true.
In which case we can't help you.
Yes.
I'm very sorry. Good luck.
Yes. So over time they have linked, and again, this is the type of thing where it's difficult to have randomized controlled studies looking at these things. Exposure widely varies. You're not just going to start hammering people with these amounts. So we've gained information in more correlative manners. This study is correlative, not causative. We do like to look for causative types of studies, but this is another one of those where it's very difficult. The outcomes are not so glaring that you're looking at something like smoking where it's so obvious and apparent and you can tell exactly what's consumed and all of those things. So don't want to get into this too deep, but non-stick pots and pans are very controversial. The FDA's stance is that because they're polymerized, so basically the PFAs are joined together to form large molecules, then applied to the surface, that they're not breaking off into their small, basically the components they're built from, and able to be ingested. So that is their stance. Now, what happens whenever the coating is damaged? How much can come off? That's where, if that's something you are firm in, I totally get it. It's prudent. But on the other hand, in terms of how they're made, how they're used, the heat, the oil, the exposure to water, those things, because they're polymerized, and again, we're getting very chemical here, but because they're all put together, it's not the same as if it's dissolved in water that you're drinking. Okay. All right. Food wrappers. This was another big one. The microwave popcorn bags, takeout containers, pet food bags, all of those packaging type things that, again, you're trying to have some heat resistance, et cetera. Those are no longer allowed to be sold in the US, but that's only a year old. So again, and it's because those they have found can be kind of more in their natural state, can be inhaled, and exposure would matter more.
Makes sense.
So I'm not saying necessarily that this is the absolute fact on these, but this is the FDA stance.
Right.
Related to water, there is now a national standard. The number is 4 nanograms per liter. It doesn't really mean anything, but there is a standard. That now, so again, as more of these types of studies have come out, and this is one of the biggest ones, that something is, being done about it. It's a national standard set by the EPA.
Okay.
So the study itself, it's pretty interesting. It's done in California. They gathered published data from between 2013 and 2015 on PFA levels in drinking water. So they just use kind of the water district boundaries, okay? And they gather that data. They know how much PFAs are in water in a given area. Then they went and gathered data on 10,200 California-born children between the ages of 0 and 15 that were diagnosed with cancer at that time.
Wow.
So they have their address. They know, based on the data that they've gathered from their water district, what the PFA levels were. They compared it against 30,000 children of that same age that thankfully had not developed cancer. So they do have a control group. Okay. So they put in significant measures to control for various demographic, socioeconomic factors. Because I know a lot of times when you're looking at correlative studies, it's, yes, they're doing this, but it's because they also don't have the access to this. Right. Or, there's cultural things. There's all kind of reasons, and not that these measures eliminate them, but they are accounted for. They are dealt with.
They're trying to take it into account.
Exactly. It's in here to whatever degree it's effective. We don't know.
Okay.
So they found increased cancer rates in children from areas with the elevated PFA levels. Brain cancer or gliomas, 26% increased rate. AML, which is a type of leukemia, 14% increased rate. Wilms tumors, which is a type of kidney cancer, 15%. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma, 19%. So significant. Yeah. Now there are other cancers. There's not the only cancers they looked at. There are other cancers that there was not an increase. But these are there were others that had more of a mild increase, but these are the ones that kind of stood out.
Yeah. I mean, a 20% increase that's an increase.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a significant number of people. So they're looking at, 40,000 in total, 10,000 of them have been diagnosed and 30,000 have not. So this is not, looking at 50 people or looking at one little area. They went to multiple water districts.
Yeah.
This is also on the heels of a 2023 publication by the International Agency for Cancer Research that linked PFA levels in humans with kidney, testicular cancer. Some data, but a little weaker on breast, prostate, liver, and colorectal cancer.
Wow. Man, so they are everywhere.
Yes.
It seems like it's impossible to get away from them. What do we do?
Yeah, and this is where I guess it kind of gets more into a discussion. But I think first and foremost, for me, it is the water. Mm-hmm. And it's because we know that reverse osmosis systems, there are other smaller brands that have different products you can look at. But I think one of the key things that you can know broadly is that reverse osmosis has been shown to remove PFAs, not to mention the chlorine and the metals and bacteria has been shown to remove PFAs. So I think, again, you could say, hey, what am I supposed to do? Never wear a waterproof coat, all those things. Well, again, that's why I went into a little bit about the polymerization effect, about the difference between it being on a coat that you have on versus ingesting it.
Yep.
So no, you cannot control from top to bottom forever chemicals.
Right.
Okay. But you can control ingesting water. And I think when you look at this aspect here with kids, I find it interesting because it's a small age difference, but not so small that you couldn't quite correlate the data. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
If you start looking at 70-year-olds and look at their water history, they may have moved 5 times. There may be so many other factors. With kids in a 15-year age window, not that some of these kids couldn't have moved and all those things, but that's why there's 40,000 of them. That I really think you could, it's not too big where there's too many other factors. Right. And you're also not dealing with other conditions. You're not dealing with diabetes and with cardiovascular disease. You're looking at smoking. They're kids.
Yeah. Kids and cancer is a pretty rare combo.
Yes.
Thankfully.
Yes. And obviously there's genetic factors. There's lots of things we don't know, but this is one that, again, I think because of who they're looking at, not just because children always are going to have an impact with us, but because, again, they're a clean slate relatively.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why I found this very interesting.
And just side issue, reverse osmosis filters, we don't sell anything like that.
Exactly.
So we're not this isn't a scare tactic to make more money. We're not going to make any money, but you should probably get a reverse osmosis filter.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, we talk about this a lot. And
if you are a reverse osmosis company though, and you'd like to sponsor us. No, I'm kidding.
But I mean, it's just the classic thing. All right. So you read about this and you're like, I'm getting reverse osmosis. I'm not going to pay attention to whole food diet. And you're going to go all these other things. And this is your answer, or this is what you're doing. I think the whole point of this show, in a sense, is to explain that how multifactorial things are. We're not here to now grab this and say, well, see, if you fix this, then now it's a part to a massive puzzle.
Forget food dyes, forget overeating, forget exercise, forget supplementation, forget pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
It's the water and the PFAS.
Right. And that's just the way it seems like everything goes now. Yeah. So that's not what we're saying either. But we're saying that there is significant risk.
Yeah.
In a population that I find valuable insight gained by, not just because they're children, but because of what we just discussed.
Yeah.
There's other benefits to reverse osmosis. And also, if you go right on and look at a whole house filter and the plumber, it's expensive. If you go look at an under-counter system, no, it's not that expensive, but you've got to have something drilled. But there are countertop units. So there's all levels of what you can do. This is not, let me put in my $2,000 system. You can get a countertop unit. I actually got one pretty recently. My wife and I use it in our coffee. That's what we give to our kids. So it's not something everybody can do. I get that, but it's something that I think from the ingesting standpoint, you can help. Brita type filters are fine. They're going to get rid of metals. They're going to get rid of chlorine. They are not going to get rid of PFAs. Of course, though, with this becoming an increasingly bigger topic, they have an elite line, because Brita is always the one you hear of. So yes, you can still get away with the Brita. Just there's an elite line. But I would say overall, if you're looking it up, just look up the PFAs. I think because basically, if it removes PFAs, it's removing everything else. So it's not going to come at any type of cost. It's going to be limited, or it's going to be PFAs and everything down the line.
Joey, thank you for pointing this out. This is these sort of articles. I saw this headline actually, and these sort of articles always just kind of make my brain swim a little bit. I really appreciate you bringing some clarity to this, especially with this population, this age group that we're talking about. It's pretty relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joey, we are going to talk about Ovarian Advanced Essentials, one of our products, a new product, but I understand we can't start there.
Yeah, I think given the specificity of this product, should go into a little bit about more specifically what it would be used for. Okay. And who is more of the target for this and who it can help.
I'm going to guess it's people with ovaries.
Yes. And that seems very obvious in a sense, but we'll pin down maybe more specifically.
Fair enough.
So we'll start with the ovaries. They're the almond-shaped glands on the sides, both sides of the female reproductive system organ, the uterus. Okay, they produce and store eggs. They release eggs during ovulation, and they critically here produce hormones. Okay, both progesterone and estrogen, which regulates the menstrual cycle, pregnancy, etc.
Yep.
All right, so Ovarian Advanced Essentials broadly supports the secretory and hormone releasing function of the ovaries. So it's not for the health of the organ itself. If there's any issues there, it's really about the secretory or hormone releasing function of it. So the benefits: improves menstrual regularity, reduces risk of metabolic syndrome by increasing insulin sensitivity.
Okay.
Reduces inflammation and helps mood swings and other mental health challenges that arise during a woman's cycle due to the hormone fluctuations. It also can improve ovulation and reduce androgen levels.
Wow.
So who's it for? Again, kind of more in broad terms, any menstruating woman, but it's really those with cycle irregularities, heavy periods, the mood swings, mental health issues associated with that, etc. So this is not me here saying that, I don't like some of those feelings when I have a period and I want to fix them and I want to take something for that. This is definitely meant, those things are natural.
Right.
Unfortunately, just something women have to deal with. So this is not, the PMS fix or the,
right.
This is, if those symptoms are more intense, they're more above average. You've talked to your doctor about it. You talk to other women and yours are more intense. This at least gets you more into the ballpark of who this would be for. More specifically and most targeted, where the bulk of the research and benefit with these ingredients in the product have been seen, where we get a stronger recommendation for us, are women who are diagnosed with PCOS.
Okay.
PCOS. Yes. So that is polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay. This was new to me. It is the most common endocrine disorder that women of reproductive age are diagnosed with, more than diabetes, more than even thyroid conditions.
Wow.
In that again, reproductive age. So the name comes from, like it sounds polycystic, from the presence of cysts on the ovaries. However, now as it's been researched, time has gone on and it is not something that must be present for the current diagnosis. Okay?
Interesting.
So PCOS symptoms and characteristics include elevated testosterone, anovulation, so the lack of egg release by the ovary during the cycle, insulin resistance, heavy irregular menstrual periods, excess hair that can come, and acne that can come along with that elevated testosterone, pelvic pain, difficulty conceiving, and patches of darker skin. What's interesting about it, it's a multifactorial condition. The root cause is not specifically defined, meaning that does the hormone imbalance lead to some of the insulin resistance? Does some of the insulin resistance lead to a hormone imbalance? What about the role of obesity, weight, inflammation, blood sugar issues, et cetera? So there's an interplay, chicken or the egg, if you will, about what causes what and how they all interplay together. So it's interesting in that sense, in terms of how you treat it and what you do about it. And some, of course, we kind of like to know what causes these things, but sometimes we just don't have that answer. Prevalence is estimated to be 4 to 18%. Among women currently menstruating.
Wow.
And some in the medical community believe it is underdiagnosed, and that some populations have upwards of a 26% prevalence.
And if obesity and insulin resistance is a major factor in this, it's not hard to imagine that this could be getting worse.
Yes, exactly. And I think anytime we're dealing with anything related to hormones and cycles and things like that, there's a broad swing of opinion on what to do. So there's a significant part of what we talked about, that these changes and these feelings that women experience are natural. And maybe you've been checked out because you do believe they're a little more intense and you're not officially diagnosed. But I think what, again, can become pretty tricky here is that the hormone levels, the symptoms, the interplay with gut health and with your insulin resistance levels and issues there potentially. The interplay does create a bit of a continuum, a spectrum, was that no, you may not be diagnosed. Your testosterone level may be okay, but you may be a little overweight. You may not eat real good, so your gut health is compromised. And your periods are a little heavy, but they're not. There's nothing that you can pinpoint into the official PCOS diagnosis. So again, on one hand, I definitely want to make clear this is not just, I don't like the way I feel during my period, so this product's for me. But on the other hand, that you have to have this official diagnosis. I think this is kind of purposely fitting the in-between stage where maybe you check a couple of these boxes, but not all of them. Again, remembering that when you're dealing with something like this, it's more of a spectrum, a continuum. So let's assume you've been checked out medically. Doctor has not maybe diagnosed you with PCOS, but again, you're dealing with some of that heavy bleeding, insulin resistance. You have looked at because what's a critical thing here, definitely due to the insulin resistance, is your diet and exercise level. And again, that's back to the chicken or the egg thing. You're not really exercising, your hormones are off, and then you don't feel good, so you don't whole cycle there. So back to kind of the product itself here. There was a study that was published in 2021. It was a meta-analysis. So we talk about those a good bit here. Study of studies. It was in the Journal of the Endocrine Society. They evaluated studies ranging from, very correlative data, related to hormone levels, obesity rates among women with and without PCOS, comparing that all the way through to implanting, to doing fecal transplants on mice with women who have PCOS and then intervening with even things like probiotics and fiber. So they looked at kind of the whole, picture of what they could related to the studies. So their ultimate conclusion and what they came up with related to PCOS was that it's a triad of factors, okay, that contribute. And the triad is bidirectional. And we'll go into that a little bit. But we had mentioned two of them. Hormone balance is, paramount, first and foremost. The second kind of level to it is the metabolism, insulin resistance issues. The third one, and that's related to the mice fecal transplants that I mentioned and the interventions associated with it, is gut microflora. So traditionally, what's diagnosed, what's treated medically deals with the two, which are still the two main ones, of course, the metabolism and the hormone imbalance. The third one, though, the gut microflora, is the one that I would say is a little more undertreated, more in recent development in terms of its role. So in that study that I mentioned, one of the studies that they studied was that significant benefits and improvements were seen via intake of fiber and probiotics across multiple studies. Okay.
Makes sense.
So using intervention, not a correlative issue of what's your diet like, but actually intervention where PCOS has been diagnosed. Can they improve some of these markers, some of these symptoms? Because it's still a very symptom driven condition, with nothing more than probiotics and fiber. Key thing to remember with fiber too is, yes, you can take it as a supplement, but whole foods, fruits, vegetables, always better, and always, a critical component of anything related to insulin resistance, weight issues, all those things. So I want to emphasize again, I mentioned that it was a bidirectional triad, and I know we had talked about this before, but so maybe you are just looking at the hormone balance. You went to a hormone specialist, but you're not really dealing with lifestyle and weight issues and diet and exercise. So your insulin resistance is not really getting any better. You're not eating any better. You're just saying hormone issues. I'm going straight to the hormone specialist, but you're not dealing with those other things. So yeah, you can see some improvement, but if those other factors are off, you're fighting uphill. So it's a critical thing to address all three of these together. So where does Ovarian Advanced Essentials fit in? The primary ingredient is inositol.
Okay.
Research shows that inositol improves insulin sensitivity, that it can balance hormones and improve ovarian secretory function, and as well as glucose balance. So the inositol really is the main ingredient here, covers to a large extent addresses two of the three components of PCOS. And so I think what you'll say is, okay, inositol, that's fine. I see inositol everywhere. You can grab it at any store. And the issue with it, and where we kind of try to step in here and see where, how we can maximize the benefit based on research, is that the forms of inositol are critical. So there's myoinositol and D-chiro Inositol. I won't bore you with the chemistry of that, but those are the forms. Okay. Further, not just using those two forms, but a 40-to-1 ratio of myo to D-chiro Inositol provides the most benefit compared to the other ratios. a very comprehensive study in 2019 in Italy compared 6 different ratios of inositol. They found varying benefit at all of the ratios, but at 40-1, they found the most benefit across multiple markers. In fact, after supplementing for 6 to 8 weeks of the 40-1, in 19 out of 22 obese women who were diagnosed with PCOS versus 6 of 22 in the placebo, they were able to induce ovulation in those women. So that's a one of the major diagnostic criterias.
Yeah.
And that's a significant difference versus placebo. So again, the varying rates, they had some success at different ratios, but that was kind of the polar opposite. 40-1, the best one, 19 out of 20 obese women with PCOS versus placebo in that same group of obese women with PCOS.
That's incredible. All right, so that's 2 of the 3 factors.
Yeah, and again, this is broad, but also specific here. But if you want to match the results from a study about a supplement, you have to match all the parameters.
Right.
So you say, oh, inositol. Yeah, you talked about inositol. This product's maybe a little more expensive than I was hoping, or I know there's inositol at my grocery store. It's not the same thing of the study that you looked at. You can't match those results, especially with something that's essentially unregulated, like the supplement industry. You can't match it if you're not matching the study parameters.
Right.
So 6 to 8 weeks were studied to see the benefit. You take it for 6 to 8 weeks. 2 grams of the dose were studied. That's the dose you need to take.
2 grams.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So we'll get there, but the product is a powder for a reason.
That makes sense.
All right. There's also to the metabolic component, there's chromium in the good picolinate form, well-studied micronutrient that helps to balance blood sugar. Zinc is in here in a low dose as well, key mineral involved in hormone balance. So we talked about there are 3 components of the PCOS triad, and this product via the inositol addresses 2 of them. The final one is that gut microflora. The way that it's done in this product is via a proprietary product called Solunol. So it's done with our manufacturer in conjunction with the company that produces this Solunol. It is a prebiotic. It's a digestive resistant potato starch. Okay. So it's a very well tolerated, because with a lot of prebiotics out there, you can definitely get some gut and GI upset, gas, bloating, etc.
Sure.
So it's very well tolerated, and it's been shown to feed the microbiome.
Okay.
Solunol has been studied that for 4 weeks. Again, we're looking at timing here at the proper 3.5 gram dose that's in the product, that it has stimulated increases in beneficial gut bacteria, reduced incidence of diarrhea, and constipation-associated bowel movements. So again, just overall gut health. So this is not to say, well, Solunol's in there, so I don't have to worry about my diet. There's still no replacement for the whole foods and the natural fibers, a natural prebiotic in your diet. There's no replacement for that. But This is a supplement that if some of that is missing, if some of those things you've tried to change and it's not going so well, you're having trouble with it, this is something that at least covers all 3 and covers that 3rd component of the triad to PCOS.
Got it. That's fantastic. How often do people take this? When do they take it? Anything like that?
This one's simple, with or without food. Again, it is a powder. So 1 scoop per day dissolved in water, with or without food, like I said, doesn't matter. 6 to 8 weeks to hope to see any legitimate benefit from it. Consider adding a separate probiotic, though, if you have other GI symptoms, significant history of antibiotic use, you're not eating much whole foods, consider adding that probiotic to your diet, to this regimen as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Fantastic. All right. Well, I hope that helps some folks out there. If you are interested in this, you should check it out on our website, askjoedimatteo.com, askjoedimatteo.com. That is where you can find Ovarian Advanced Essentials and all the other wonderful products we have. Thanks, Joey. That's it for us today. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, we would love to hear them. Email us questions@askjoedimatteo.com. That's questions@askjoedimatteo.com. That's also the website where you can find this show and past episodes of this show. You can find the products we talk about. No reverse osmosis filters, though. That's www. Do you know how to do a website, Tyler? askjoedimatteo.com, askjoedimatteo.com. If you like this show, share it with somebody you know and love, somebody else that could use this information. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.